So we will start off by calling the roll. Mr. Barnes, Mr. Battle, Mrs. Lucas-Burke.
Here.
Mr. Moody, Dr. Whitaker, Mr. Woodard.
Here.
Mayor Glover.
Here.
Council members, the reason why your agenda was set up the way it is because there are several things that we have to work out before we can, before you can elect your chairman and officers. The first part of that is the discussion and adoption of your bylaws. This information was previously sent to you, and hopefully you've had a chance to review it prior to this meeting. At this time is your opportunity to have discussion about any recommended adjustments that may be necessary before adoption.
The quorum. I know in the bylaws that I see 2 persons make a quorum.
No, I believe 4.
Is it 4?
Should be 4, yeah.
Should be the same.
You might be thinking about the same person can hold 2 offices, treasurer and
Oh, no, I
secretary.
know it was a special meeting.
Okay, yeah.
A special
Yes,
Yeah.
special meeting too. And that's to call the meetings, just like with council.
Yeah.
The chair or 3 council members can call a meeting. Well, with this particular board, it's the chair or 2 members. Any other items? If not, if we can get a motion to adopt your bylaws.
Move to adopt the bylaws as printed.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Battle is absent. Mrs. Lucas-Burke?
Yes.
Moody is absent. Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Thank you. And your bylaws are adopted. At this time, we're on item number 3, which is membership discussion. I've been made aware of a council member who would prefer not to serve on the board and to have a citizen appointed in the stead. And Mayor Glover, I will turn it over to you with your concern.
With my concern about,
Not being the member and appointing someone else in your stead.
yeah, so for me, the concern is that because this requires a level of expertise that I'm just not familiar with, I would recommend that I not be appointed to this board, and I would appoint someone who I believe has the professional expertise and experience to be successful in that role.
This is your opportunity for discussion.
So do we need that person to be identified before we determine the other office holders?
Right now, the office holders are the members of City Council. If you choose not to be the member, then what would happen is either you or the board can recommend a person to, just like we do with boards and commissions.
Right.
And that whoever is appointed would serve out the term of that council member.
Okay.
So in this particular case, if Mayor Glover wanted to recommend someone and the board was agreeable to that, then that person would have to be appointed by City Council to serve in the stead of the mayor and would serve out the mayor's term on council.
Right.
And that's how we would establish the terms for the board.
Right. But, and my question was, does that person need to be present at one of our authority board meetings before we determine who the other officers are going to be? Or can we go ahead and establish that and then that person just fill in wherever it's left?
Unless multiple council members want someone else to fill in their stead, if it's only one person, then I think you're fine to go ahead and vote your officers.
And I do have the name of the individual
Okay.
and his bio, if I could read it. Is that possible,
Sure,
or is that
sir.
not necessary? So the person that I recommend, some of you may be familiar with him, Ron Greene. Ron Greene is the Vice President of Business Transformation at the Port of Virginia, where he leads the Process Excellence and Business Intelligence and Analytics Department. He joined the Port in 2015 after spending 20 years holding a number of management positions across diverse companies and industries, including Booz Allen Hamilton, Management Consulting, Newport News Shipbuilding, Honeywell Aerospace, Commercial Aviation. Throughout his career, he has led change initiatives, strategic planning engagements, process redesigns, and mentored and taught others to do the same. He is active in his community, currently serving as the Portsmouth representative to the TCC College Board, chair of the Portsmouth General Hospital Foundation, a board member of the Portsmouth Museums Foundation, and a graduate of both Lead Hampton Roads and LEFCO leadership programs. Mr. Greene was previously on the board of Starbase Victory, a not-for-profit focused on sparking an interest in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics among all students in the Portsmouth Public Schools. He also serves in his local church as both a deacon and superintendent of adult Sunday school. Mr. Greene graduated from the University of Virginia with a BS in Aerospace Engineering in 1991 and an MBA from the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia in 1997. Even though both his degrees were earned in Virginia, he has lived and worked in California, Arizona, Connecticut. During his time in Arizona, he met his wife Tina, and they returned to Virginia, where they live since 2001. Ron and Tina reside in Portsmouth and have one son in high school.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Council members, are there any objections to Mr. Greene replacing the mayor? Yes, sir.
Since the presentation us has always been that it's going to be council members.
Correct.
I think it would be in our best interest for the council to be proof, just 4 of us present. I think that should be something considered with.
Yes, sir. What we're looking for right now is to get a consensus of the current body, and just like with boards and commissions, you as our representative, because Vice Mayor Barnes is not here, would then at the council meeting bring this up to the council under boards and commissions for discussion like we do with the other boards and commissions.
So it's nothing to decide at this point?
No, sir.
No.
It's just
No.
to kind of get a feel from the council if you have any objection to someone else replacing the council member. The mayor has made a recommendation of who he would suggest in his stead. So with that from the board, if there's no objection, then if you would take, during the boards and commissions portion, bring up the fact that the mayor has recommended Mr. Greene, and to have a discussion among the council members during the meeting.
Yeah, I think that needs to be held off to another meeting in case other council members may have persons that they want to serve.
Okay, we can do that. Any other discussion?
Well, I think it was always suggested that this is a council, that the council be overseeing this particular, business venture. And I think it's just a little bit too early on to be swapping out council members and citizens. This is just very important, process that we're going through right here in Portsmouth, and we need to make sure that we, people grasp it, so we won't make any mistakes. So, that's my preference. I think we should oversee it for, this early on in this venture that we're going through here in Portsmouth. I really do.
Okay. Noting the conversation, there will be another opportunity for council to have a discussion on the appointment. Unless there is any additional conversation on this item, we will go to the election of officers. And at this time, we can entertain a motion for a chair. Yes, sir.
Can I make a motion for a chair?
Sure.
I'd like to move that Councilwoman Lisa Lucas Burke be the chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to elect Councilwoman Lucas Burke as chair. Is there any discussion? Okay. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Battle?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody is absent. Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
And we're in need of a motion for vice chair.
I'll make a motion myself. I'll make a motion that Councilmember Woodard be vice chair of this board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second recommending Councilman Woodard as vice chair. Is there any discussion? Okay. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Battle?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody is absent. Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Congratulations. You are chair, vice chair, excuse me. Okay, and it is also necessary to elect your secretary, who is me. According to the Articles of Incorporation.
That's etched in stone.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but not that.
Yes.
We love you.
Yes.
I will need a motion and a second.
I move that we nominate Deborah White for our secretary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, thank you. And Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Battle?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody is absent. Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Thank you. And for treasurer is our CFO or her designee. If we could have a motion.
Is the other designee from the manager? Okay.
We won't keep treasure with the treasure.
That money over there.
And basically, if Miss Terry is not available, she will designate a staff person to attend in her stead. Okay? And if we could get a motion, please.
I move that we accept as our treasurer the CFO or designee.
Yes, sir. And a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Thank you. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Battle?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Moody is absent. Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And you have your elected officers. Under future business, number 5, one of the items that needs to be discussed is the date and time for your regular meetings. Do you have any discussion on that item?
The bylaws, I see it says regular meetings. Does it say the frequency?
Yeah.
That's for you all to decide.
Okay.
I would like
So
to
you can have them
propose-
monthly, you can have them quarterly, it's up to the board.
I would like to propose a quarterly meeting on the second Tuesday before the council meeting. I mean, we're already coming here anyway. Would it be an hour, or how long would we need to deliberate?
I think initially an hour should be fine.
Okay.
Um,
So the second
At 4 p.m.?
at 4, if that's,
Second Tuesday in each.
yes,
Okay, quarterly.
questions?
quarterly.
So, yes, sir.
I would like to suggest monthly till we get a grasp of what it is we're actually doing, and then if we
Yeah.
see that it can be moved to quarterly.
Okay,
Okay, are you good with that? Okay.
yes.
How often are we going to need to meet, being that this is the embryonic stage, to get a grasp of what we're doing here?
That's what Dr. Whitaker was just
I
indicating.
understand that, but I'm saying, is that sufficient, a month? Or should we meet every 2 weeks for 3 months and then change it to a month if that's applicable? That's what it's saying.
I do.
At this time, we do have some agreements coming up that I'm going to be talking about, and I think once a month is probably sufficient, but if things end up moving faster, we can always call extra meetings as needed.
Yes,
At that
'cause
second Tuesday time slot.
speed is very important. Yes.
So is the board agreeable to monthly at this time? And the second Tuesday
Yes.
at 4 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We will get notifications out indicating that. As for the format for the meeting, one of the items to be considered is, do you want to have a public comment portion? And if so, how long do they speak? This is your discussion.
I would suggest we do have a public comment, and I would say 3 minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that-
Are you open to, do you want them to pre-register, or do you want to just open it up to the floor? And if you open it up to the floor, keeping in mind you only have an hour, how much time do you want to allocate for public comment?
I would just say initially, we could have pre-register, and if there are persons that would like to speak,
Okay.
that we allow it.
Kind of like we do with city council meetings. Okay. And are you okay with that coming at the end, or do you want that at the beginning of your meeting agenda?
At the end.
Word,
Mhm.
Are there any other items that you would like to be considered in your public comment format? Keeping in mind you're working in an hour.
Right. I think we just
Yeah, I think that's
stick
it.
to the agenda items. Maybe if we have an agenda item, they speak to that.
And we can have, like we have on this agenda, future business.
Right.
So if it's something that comes up that you all want to have come on the next agenda, that will be your opportunity to
To allow them
add
to
that. Of course, we will be adding minutes
Mm-hmm.
to the agenda for you all to adopt.
Okay.
And I'll say non-agenda speakers for the sake of argument,
Okay.
or just speakers.
Right. Speakers. Mm-hmm.
So is there any other area you all want to have a part of your public meeting? Or is this good to start
I think
out?
it's good to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can make the adjustment as you
Right.
go along. Okay. And at this time, again, we're on the future business portion. If there's any discussion or items that you'd like to bring up at this time.
Yes. I would like to get an update as far as what exactly, what type of business transactions will this authority be participating in or voting on? As far as the broadband entity itself that we're over, what type of revenue is it going to be generating?
That's my question.
What's the business aspect of it? I would like to get some insight on that.
Sure, Dr. Whitaker.
And who is the revenue for? Is it for the city? Is it for the state? Is it for the independent folk? What is the complete gamut of the revenue system?
Sure. So, right now, with the way the authority is set up, the primary driver of revenue would be through something called dark fiber leases. This is something that Mr. Jones talked a little bit about at council's previous work session. But as you know, Portsmouth's ring was constructed intentionally with a lot of extra capacity, and they can lease this extra capacity to businesses that have large data needs, like internet service providers, data centers, or just companies that are using a lot of data. And you can do this through what's called a dark fiber lease. So Staff is currently working on a template lease agreement that we can use because we already have some interest from third parties to lease this extra space. And the idea would be at your next meeting, we'd have a draft of this agreement that you can review and make comments on. And we would also provide a market analysis of what the price range would be, what the price points would be to lease our fiber ring. And this would be presented for your consideration. They would be ready to go if you wanted, otherwise it could just be a discussion point for further consideration.
So is there a projected revenue that has already been examined as far as what this dark fiber as part of the ring is expected to bring in?
I don't know if the market review is complete as of yet, so I don't want to speak out of turn. We would definitely have that ready to go by our next meeting. But dark fiber is, the lease amounts for it are a lot less than being a full internet service provider. But that's because essentially when you do dark fiber leases, you don't have a lot of ongoing maintenance costs that you have to do. So the cost output for this authority is very low, and yet you still get revenue coming in.
So once these businesses or organizations contract to be a part of the dark fiber, can they subcontract out to others who would go through them to get to the dark fiber?
I think if I understand your question, the answer would be yes. So in theory, if somebody like Cox wanted to use our ring and they contracted with us to get dark fiber on our ring, then Cox might sell their internet service to another entity or an individual at the other line. So that individual is ending up using our fiber ring because of this dark fiber lease.
So right, so this, when I heard it presented, it sort of reminded me of this being like 21st century Cox, how they came into the area with cable and
monopolized it.
franchised it and so forth. So is that what this has the potential of being at the broadband level, where you have that type of service now that's being provided not only to businesses but to residents who can tap into this particular service?
If this body wanted to provide that, they could, yes. But that would require a lot more investment in more equipment and infrastructure if this authority wanted to be that ultimate service provider. At this point in time, we can just lease that extra capacity. If you want to look into being a service provider and providing end service to end users, we can certainly look into that, but it's going to take a good amount more time and money in order to get to that point.
But no projections have been done on that as far as the revenue that would generate for the
From
city?
that?
Right.
No.
Or for the fiber ring period, you're saying there hasn't been?
Well, the fiber ring itself was constructed more of a cost avoidance for the city. So the city constructed it because it saves the city money on its own fiber needs. So just doing nothing, if we don't lease it at all, within 10 years it pays for itself, and then the next 10 years after that, we're saving, I forget how much money.
Almost 700,000.
$750,000
That's right.
a year.
But the goal is to
Right.
generate revenue.
Well, it's a benefit that we can use, yes. So essentially, any revenue that we get from these leases is just gravy.
And can you explain where the money got, answer Mr. Battle's question?
No, I have a question.
You had a previous question, you were asking where the money was going.
We'll get to that
Okay.
one. We've already approved 2 companies to do something with our broadband. Does that something include them having access to our dark matter?
What you're referring to are the fiber franchise agreements, I believe.
The 2 that we were compelled to approve was told to us that the state compelled us to approve those two, do they have access to our dark matter?
Fiber.
And if so, how much of it? If so, well, that's
The fiber franchise agreements don't have any applicability to this ring, so they don't have access to the dark fiber.
okay.
They're just building their own fiber in the right-of-way.
Won't this allow internet service at certain localities around the town, the city? Can we run it to, for example, the housing and so forth?
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. So that is
That's
that's the next bit of future business that would be coming up for this board to consider as PRHA wireless service. So that would be providing end users internet access. And that's a bit of a special case. So with a CARES Act grant that the city received from the state, they were able to purchase wireless equipment and place it on the PRHA residences. And essentially this hooks up all those PRHA properties to Portsmouth Ring. And by flipping a switch, it can pump out internet through those pieces of wireless equipment and provide internet access to all of the residences at PRHA. Which is great, except that the state code says that the city can't do that. The city's not allowed to provide end user internet access, but this authority can. So with your consensus, staff can work on taking the steps that will be needed to essentially flip that switch on and provide PRHA with wireless internet access. And this would include drafting an MOU with PRHA, drafting a lease or some sort of similar agreement to transfer control of those unused strands from the city to this entity, and then obtaining quotes from internet service providers to essentially plug in those strands that you'd be getting from the city so that there'd be a way to get the internet from point A to point B. So if we have that consensus, then at the next meeting, we can bring to you those drafts of those agreements and those quotes for your consideration.
And those, and the cost for us providing that to them would be, we don't know yet.
That would be the quotes that
That would be the
getting.
quotes, okay. And then the revenue that's generated from the dark fiber leases, is that under our, is it a separate budget? Does it funnel back into our infrastructure budget, or how does the money allocate flow?
That would go to this entity, and what you decide to do with those funds would be up to you. Perhaps you'd use that to pay for the plug-in, some of that to kind of plug in, but go.
I just wanted to add on to that this authority is very similar to EDA, PPIC, Redevelopment and Housing
Okay.
Authority, in
Separate
that
budgets and-
all the revenue that's generated from this authority goes back into the authority, and also the expenses come out of the authority. And so very much like those entities,
Right.
that's how that revenue and those expenses will be
Okay.
treated.
Got it.
So the PRHA service that's going to be provided, that's going to be revenue generating?
That's up to you. When this idea initially came about, I think the idea was that you would provide it for free to PRHA residents because a lot of them can't afford high-speed internet access, but you can charge whatever rates you want. Once you're talking about revenue generation and you have to find a way to capture that revenue, it does kind of add some administrative costs if you're making people pay for service. We'd have to look into that.
Are we contracting with the residents or with PRHA?
Well,
PRHA.
PRHA, but it would really just be essentially pumping out free internet unless you want to charge for it.
Well, I'm saying
And then it would be through-
we will not be collecting, we wouldn't be collecting from residents.
No.
We would be collecting from PRHA.
Probably, well, it depends on how you structure it. I think it would be more likely that if you're putting out the wireless internet, that you'd be collecting from individual, if you wanted to collect funds, that it would be more likely to happen through the individual residents.
I would, if it's, since it's with the authority, I would rather see us contracting with PRHA, since they are a standalone entity. They are
Yes.
HUD funded, so.
Right.
The only problem with going through PRHA is also not allowed to provide end user internet access to people. Right. They have the same prohibitions as the city does.
So
But
you say, I'm sorry, go on, Mr.
We could get paid through PRHA for the residents.
She said they can't pay.
Right. That would still be. I think that would still be considered contracting with PRHA to provide. And
Well, instead of trying to decide it.
Yeah.
Why don't we just look at?
yes.
All right, it looks like we've had some very robust dialogue so far. If there's no additional discussion to be had by the board, then
I did have a question, and perhaps this will be the question in the work session about the South Side Network Authority participation. Would that be in the next
Yes,
session?
That's the
that's
next
the work session.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
I just want to tell everybody how proud we should be of this ring. I don't know if any other city in Tidewater has completed their rings, but you know, we always act like we're behind the the rest of Tidewater. We're ahead of the rest of Tidewater. This ring is fantastic, what it can do, and I think the staff, Kelsey, did a wonderful job. I think Mike Lockaby may be here. Is that Mike is over here? Advised us on that Portsmouth ring. We appreciate that, and it's something we ought to be proud about. We're always talking, let's do like Virginia Beach, let's do like Norfolk. This is something Portsmouth led the way, and we have our own ring, and it's going to be of great benefit. So we
Thank you.
ought to be proud.
Great job.
For the public that is present, beginning the next meeting of the board, we will have on the agenda speakers opportunity. For this meeting, it's just their organization meeting. So for this meeting, we will not be taking speakers, but we will start at their next meeting. Councilman Battle.
It's a ploy when folk talk about Portsmouth. We're one of the most important hubs in this area. We have a shipyard that defended this country in the embryonic stages when we had just begun. We ship more goods than services. What they hear is a dark horse approaching the finish line, and folk will do anything to psychologically destroy a people to make them feel inferior. But surely we will be one of the most prominent cities in this area because of the 5G, because of the casino, because of all of the companies that see the benefits of coming here. We're going to even have large finance companies to come because we have the capacity to carry their traffic with the 5G. So that old foolishness about we this, we'll hold our heads up, and we are that we are. And that anybody will make us feel psychologically inferior to them because they want to be the Joneses. We're not going to want to be the Joneses. We're going to be that they follow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no additional business of the board, this meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you all.
So much.